The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered hulls. Captain Marcus Hale guided his battered freighter through the twisted metal with practiced ease, his fingers dancing across the manual controls with the precision of someone who had long ago stopped trusting autopilot systems. The Rust Bucket, as he'd sardonically named his ship, wasn't much to look at. She was a Terran-made Wolverine-class freighter, at least 40 years past her prime, held together by determination, creative welding, and what Marcus liked to call selective physics. But she was his, free and clear, and that meant everything to a man with nowhere else to go. Marcus reached for his coffee, grimacing at the cold, bitter liquid. The heating element in his food processor had died 3 days ago, joining a growing list of non-essential systems he couldn't afford to fix. He was down to his last few thousand credits, barely enough for fuel and basic supplies at the next station, assuming he could make it that far. The dead zone. They called this region of space, a vast expanse between the outer colonies and the alien territories, where the gravitational anomalies made faster than light travel unpredictable and dangerous. Ships that ventured here either had a death wish, were running from something, or had nowhere else to go. Marcus qualified for all three. His reflection caught in the darkened view screen for a moment. 3 days of stubble covered a jaw that had once been clean-shaven and regulation perfect. Gray had started creeping into his brown hair at the temples, though he was barely 35. The scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone had faded from angry red to pale silver. But the memories it carried remained fresh. The Battle of Kepler Station, 2 years ago, but it might as well have been yesterday. Marcus's squadron had been assigned to protect the human colony from a Zalathi raid. The Zalathi were one of the older spacefaring races, their technology generations ahead of humanity's. They viewed humans as little more than clever animals, barely worth acknowledging except when human colonies happened to be built on resources they wanted. The betrayal had come from within. Someone in command had sold out their patrol routes, their defensive weaknesses. Marcus had watched his squadron get torn apart, watched his wingman Sarah's fighter explode in a cascade of blue fire. He'd survived only because a piece of shrapnel had knocked him unconscious. His damaged fighter, spinning into the debris field where the Zalathi hadn't bothered to finish him off. The inquiry afterward had been a joke. No evidence of betrayal. They said, tactical error. They concluded. Marcus had been quietly discharged with a partial pension that barely covered his medical bills. The dreams still woke him most nights. Sarah's voice crackling through the comm as her ship came apart. A soft chime from the sensor array pulled him from his brooding. Marcus frowned, checking the readings. Out here in the dead zone, sensor contacts were usually just more debris or the occasional rogue asteroid. But this was different. This was a distress signal. He almost ignored it. Distress signals in the dead zone were often traps. Pirates using automated beacons to lure in salvagers and desperate traders. But something about this one made him pause. The frequency was wrong. The modulation pattern unlike anything in the standard databases. It wasn't human, and it wasn't from any of the known alien species that occasionally traded with humanity. Marcus pulled up the signal analysis on his main screen. The computer struggled with a translation matrix, cycling through thousands of linguistic patterns before finally producing a rough approximation. Critical system failure. Life support failing. 32 souls await the embrace of the void. If any receive this transmission, we plead for aid. We have nothing to offer but our gratitude and the knowledge that you did not let us die alone in the dark. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. 32 lives. The smart move was to mark the coordinates and sell the information to a salvage company. Even a modest finder's fee would keep him flying for another few months. But those words, "Die alone in the dark," echoed in his mind. How many times had he thought the same thing, drifting through the empty spaces between stars? He ran a deeper scan, pushing his sensors to maximum range. The signal source was coming from a massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of the rust bucket. The configuration was unlike anything in his database. Organic curves blending with geometric precision in a way that hurt to look at directly. Energy readings were minimal, barely above background radiation. The ship was dying. But it was the next piece of data that made his blood run cold. The ship's hull composition, the energy signature of what remained of its engines, the specific frequency modulation of its communications array. All of it matched one species, the Zalathi. Marcus's hands clenched on the control stick. The Zalathi, the same species that had been allied with the raiders at Kepler Station, the ones who had provided the weapons that tore through human shields like tissue paper. They were asking him for help. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a disgraced pilot scraping by on the margins of civilized space, and his former enemies were begging for rescue. He could leave them to die. No one would ever know. It would be a kind of justice, wouldn't it? Let them experience what Sarah had experienced. That terrifying moment when you realize no help is coming. But even as the thought formed, Marcus knew he couldn't do it. Maybe it was the way the message had been phrased, the simple dignity in accepting death while still hoping for rescue. Maybe it was because he'd spent too many nights wondering if anyone would answer his own distress call when his luck finally ran out. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because he was tired of the anger, tired of carrying the weight of revenge that had no outlet. Marcus engaged the sublight engines, adjusting course toward the alien vessel. The journey would take 6 hours at maximum burn, using up a significant portion of his remaining fuel. If this was a trap, he'd be dead. If it wasn't, he'd barely have enough fuel to reach the next station. Either way, he was committed now. As the rust bucket accelerated, Marcus noticed something odd in the debris field. The wreckage here wasn't random. There were patterns, deliberate arrangements that suggested a battle had taken place. But the damage signatures were wrong. Energy weapons hadn't done this. The tears in the hull fragments were too clean, too precise. Something had cut through these ships like a surgical laser through flesh. The hours passed slowly. Marcus tried to sleep but couldn't. Tried to eat but had no appetite. He ran diagnostics on his weapon systems, such as they were. 2 mining lasers he'd converted for defense, and a handful of countermeasures that might buy him 30 seconds against a real warship. If this was a trap, he was walking into it practically naked. As he drew closer, more details of the alien vessel became clear. It was beautiful in an unsettling way, like a deep-sea creature that had evolved in the absolute darkness of ocean trenches. The hull seemed to shimmer, not from any coating or energy field, but as if the metal itself was partially out of phase with normal space. Zalathi technology. He knew, incorporated aspects of dimensional manipulation that human scientists were only beginning to theorize about. The ship was called the Starwind, according to the rough translation his computer provided. There were no obvious weapons ports, which meant either they were well hidden or this was a civilian vessel. Marcus was betting on the former. The Zalathi didn't build anything without weapons. His comm system crackled to life, startling him. A voice came through, speaking heavily accented but understandable English. The Zalathi had always been quick to learn human languages, viewing it as a necessity when dealing with what they considered a lesser species. Unknown vessel. This is Navigation Specialist Serenia of the Starwind. We detect your approach. Please, we mean no harm. Our situation is desperate. Our main reactor has suffered cascade failure, and our engineer estimates we have less than 10 hours before life support fails completely. We have wounded aboard, including young ones. Please, we know our species have been enemies, but we beg for your compassion. Young ones, children. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of decision. Children changed everything. They always did. Whatever sins their parents had committed, Children were innocent. Starwind. This is Captain Marcus Hale of the independent freighter Rustbucket. I'm approaching your starboard docking array. I need you to understand something. My ship is small, and my resources are limited. I can't evacuate your entire crew, but I'll do what I can to help stabilize your systems. Prepare for docking. There was a pause. Then Serenya's voice returned, thick with emotion. Captain Hale, we understand. We are grateful for any assistance. Our docking bay has lost pressure, but we can guide you to an auxiliary port. Please, be aware that our artificial gravity is failing. Some sections of the ship are experiencing variable gravitational fields. Marcus brought the Rustbucket alongside the massive alien vessel, feeling like a minnow parking next to a whale. The auxiliary docking port was designed for Zalathi shuttles, but with some creative maneuvering, he managed to achieve a seal. The pressure equalized with a hiss, and Marcus stood before the airlock, pulse pistol in hand. He wasn't sure what he expected when the door opened, but it wasn't the scene that greeted him. The corridor beyond was in emergency lighting, casting everything in a deep purple glow that the Zalathi apparently found soothing. 3 figures stood waiting for him, and Marcus got his first real look at the species he'd been hating for 2 years. They were tall, averaging about 2.5 meters, with elongated limbs that moved with an unsettling grace. Their skin was a deep blue-gray, with a subtle scaled pattern that caught the emergency lights. They had 4 arms, the secondary pair smaller and more delicate, usually kept folded against their torsos. Their faces were vaguely humanoid but stretched, with large eyes that had no visible pupils, just swirling patterns of silver and gold. The one in front, who Marcus assumed was Serenya, stepped forward. Her movements were careful, non-threatening. When she spoke, her mouth revealed rows of small, sharp teeth that would have been terrifying if not for the obvious exhaustion in her posture. Captain Hale, I am Serenya. This is our chief engineer, Kalor, and our medical specialist, Thyma. We are grateful beyond words for your arrival. Please, follow us to our command center. We can brief you on our situation more fully there. Marcus kept his hand on his weapon but didn't draw it. Lead the way. But understand, I'm here to help with your technical problems. Nothing more. Kalor, the engineer, made a sound that might have been a snort of derision. His voice was deeper than Serenya's, rougher. A single human. You think you can repair what our best engineers cannot? This is desperate foolishness. Serenya. Desperate times, Serenya replied quietly, require desperate measures. Captain Hale has risked much to answer our call. We will show him respect. As they moved through the corridors, Marcus couldn't help but notice the signs of catastrophe. Scorch marks on the walls, panels torn away to access systems beneath, the occasional flicker of lights suggesting power fluctuations. But it was the crew members they passed that really drove home the severity of the situation. Zalathi crew members sat slumped against walls, their usual grace replaced by exhaustion. Some bore injuries, burns, and lacerations that their medical facilities apparently couldn't fully treat. And then Marcus saw them, the young ones, smaller Zalathi, their scales still soft-looking, their movements uncertain. They watched him with those swirling eyes, fear and curiosity warring in their expressions. One small Zalathi, barely reaching Marcus's waist, approached despite the urgent whispers of an adult. The child spoke in broken English, obviously learned recently. You are human. You help us. My parent says humans are brave. Are you brave? Marcus found himself kneeling despite himself, meeting the child's eyes. I'm going to try to help, yes. And brave, I don't know about that. Sometimes being brave just means being too stubborn to run away. The child made a tinkling sound that Marcus realized was laughter. Then an adult pulled the young one away, speaking rapidly in their own language. Marcus stood, finding Serenya watching him with an unreadable expression. You have young ones of your own, she asked. No, Marcus replied curtly, starting to walk again. Never had the chance. They reached the command center, and Marcus let out a low whistle. It was a disaster. Consoles were dark, others sparked randomly. The main holographic display flickered between different readings, none of them good. The air had an acrid smell, burnt electronics mixed with something organic and unpleasant. Your main reactor, Marcus asked, moving to one of the functioning consoles. Suffered a cascade failure approximately 18 hours ago, Kaylor said. We managed to prevent a core breach, but the damage to our power distribution network was severe. We're running on auxiliary power, but the batteries are nearly depleted. Marcus studied the readouts, his neural implant interfacing with the alien systems. It was a struggle. The Zalathi computer architecture was radically different from human designs, but gradually, he began to understand what he was looking at. This wasn't an accident, he said suddenly, causing all three Zalathi to turn toward him. These failure patterns, they're too precise. Someone sabotaged your reactor. The question is whether they're still on board. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Serenia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. That's impossible. Every member of this crew has served together for years. We are not a military vessel. Captain, we're a research ship, studying gravitational anomalies in this region. Who would do such a thing? Marcus turned from the console to face them. In my experience, the worst betrayals always come from within. Someone on this ship wanted you dead, and they nearly succeeded. The good news is, I think I can stabilize your power grid long enough to get your life support fully operational. The bad news is, whoever did this is probably still here, and they're not going to be happy about me interfering. Kaylor's forearms crossed in what was apparently a universal gesture of skepticism. You claim to understand our technology after looking at it for mere minutes. Forgive me if I find that difficult to believe. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. I spent 6 months in a Zalathi prison camp after the Battle of Proxima. You'd be surprised what you can learn when your life depends on figuring out alien technology. Your people made sure I understood exactly how inferior human engineering was. Turns out, that education is about to save your lives. The three Zalathi exchanged glances, and Marcus could see the shift in their perception of him. Not just a random human traitor, but a former soldier, a prisoner of war, someone who had every reason to hate them, yet had still answered their call. What do you need from us? Serenia asked simply. Marcus turned back to the console, his fingers already working. Time, tools, and someone watching my back while I work. Because whoever did this is going to try again, and this time, they'll be aiming for me. Marcus had been working for 3 hours straight, his hands deep in the guts of an alien power coupling. When he heard the footsteps behind him, not the fluid gait of the Zalathi, but something trying to mimic it. He didn't turn around, didn't stop working, but his free hand drifted to the plasma cutter at his belt. If you're going to try to kill me, he said conversationally, at least wait until I finish this connection. Otherwise, this whole section is going to lose gravity, and zero-G murder is just messy for everyone involved. The footsteps stopped. There was a long pause. Then Serenia's voice came from the doorway, tinged with amusement. Your species' reputation for paranoia appears to be well earned. Captain Hale. Marcus extracted himself from the maintenance panel and turned to find Serenia holding a tray with what appeared to be food and a container of liquid. Behind her, keeping a respectful distance, stood 2 other Zalathi he hadn't met yet. It's not paranoia if someone actually is trying to kill you, Marcus replied, accepting the tray with a nod of thanks. He examined the contents suspiciously. The food looked like crystallized seaweed, mixed with something that might have been meat, if meat came in perfect geometric cubes. It's safe for human consumption, Serenia assured him. We ran it through our xenobiology database. The green portions are a protein substitute we cultivate. The cubes are, well, it's better if you don't know, but they're nutritious and won't kill you. Marcus took a tentative bite, finding the taste somewhere between salted cardboard and overcooked seafood. It wasn't pleasant, but he'd eaten worse during survival training. So, wanna tell me why your crew keeps watching me like I'm about to steal the silverware? Serena's silver-gold eyes swirled in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as discomfort. You must understand, Captain. Most of my crew has never seen a human in person. Your species is discussed frequently in our media, but rarely in flattering terms. Let me guess, Marcus said between bites. Primitive, violent, unexpectedly clever for talking monkeys. Something like that, though the exact translation of the terms used would be considerably less polite. Serena settled onto a nearby crate, with that unsettling grace all Zalathi seemed to possess. Yet, here you are, risking your life to save us. It challenges many preconceptions. Marcus snorted. Don't make me out to be some kind of saint. I answered your distress call because I was curious, and because dying alone in the void is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. Even... He paused, then forced himself to continue. Even former enemies. Former enemies, Serena repeated thoughtfully. You mentioned a prison camp. You were at Proxima. Battle of Proxima, not the colony, Marcus corrected. My squadron was assigned to delay the Zalathi fleet long enough for the civilian transports to evacuate. We knew it was a suicide mission going in. 48 fighters against a full battle group. We lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes, one of the other Zalathi breathed. Marcus looked at him properly, for the first time, noting the scars across his face, the way one of his secondary arms hung useless at his side. Against a battle group. That's impossible. Humans are good at impossible, Marcus said flatly. It's about the only thing we're good at, according to the rest of the galaxy. Too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Too stupid to stay down when we are. He turned back to the power coupling, making a final adjustment. The emergency lights flickered, then steadied, growing noticeably brighter. A soft hum filled the air as systems began coming back online throughout the section. There, he said, stepping back. That should hold for about 12 hours. Maybe 15 if we're lucky. It's not a permanent fix, but it'll buy us time to work on the main reactor. Kaylor appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. How did you do that? That coupling uses quantum entanglement protocols that took our engineers years to understand. Marcus wiped his hands on his already filthy coveralls. Zalathi prison camps aren't known for their amenities. When the heating system fails in the middle of winter, you either figure out how to fix alien technology, or you freeze to death. Amazing motivator. Hypothermia. The engineer's forearms performed a complicated gesture that might have been respect or disbelief. You learned our technology as a prisoner. I learned enough to survive, Marcus said. Your guards found it amusing, watching the primitive human trying to understand superior Zalathi engineering. They'd sometimes give me broken equipment just to see what I'd do with it. Joke was on them, I guess. I'm a quick study when my life depends on it. He gathered his tools, very aware of the weight of multiple gazes on him. Now, about that main reactor. I'm going to need to see it in person. The readings on your consoles don't make sense. Either your sensors are malfunctioning, or someone's been very clever about hiding what they did. Serena stood, that fluid motion making her seem to pour upward rather than simply rise. I'll escort you, Kaylor. Please have teams begin implementing Captain Hale's modifications to the other power couplings. The engineer hesitated. You trust him alone with our main reactor if he wanted to destroy us? He's had 3 hours to sabotage our systems, Serena pointed out. Instead, he's been repairing them. At some point, Kaylor, We must choose to trust, or we all die suspicious and alone. The path to the main reactor took them through the heart of the ship. Marcus found himself fascinated, despite his best efforts to remain detached. The Zalathi vessel was as much a work of art as engineering. Corridors curved in organic spirals that somehow made perfect sense for traffic flow. Walls seemed to breathe. Subtle movements in the metallic surface that he realized were actually micro-adjustments to maintain structural integrity. They passed through what appeared to be a communal area, where dozens of Zalathi had gathered. Conversations died as Marcus entered, all those swirling eyes turning to track his movement. He saw fear there, and curiosity, and something else. Hope. Maybe a few of the younger ones waved their secondary arms at him. A gesture he'd learned was friendly, though their parents quickly pulled them back. "They're terrified of me," Marcus observed once they'd passed through. "Yes," Serenia agreed simply, "but also fascinated. You're a contradiction to everything they've been taught. Humans are supposed to be crude, violent creatures who solve every problem with force. Yet here you are, solving problems we couldn't, using only your mind and skilled hands." "Oh, I'm plenty violent when I need to be," Marcus said darkly. "Your people made sure of that." They walked in silence for a moment before Serenia spoke again. "What happened to you at Proxima, after the battle?" Marcus considered not answering, but something about the darkness between the stars, about being surrounded by former enemies who were now depending on him, loosened his tongue. "3 of us survived the battle. Me, Sarah Henricks, and Tom Nakamura. The Zalathi picked us up, said they were following the conventions of war, treating prisoners humanely. For about a week, that was true. Then we were transferred to a research facility. They wanted to understand human resilience, they said, how we could keep fighting when logic dictated we should surrender." He paused at an intersection, letting Serenia guide him left. The tests started small. Sleep deprivation, temperature extremes, psychological pressure. Tom broke first, started telling them everything he knew about human fleet positions, technology, anything to make it stop. They killed him anyway. Said he was weak, not a proper example of human endurance. "And Sarah?" Serenia asked quietly. "Sarah lasted 2 months. She was stronger than any of us. Even when they—" Marcus stopped, his jaw clenching. "She never broke, never gave them anything. She died cursing them in 3 languages. The Zalathi commander said she was a worthy adversary, as if that was supposed to mean something." They reached the reactor chamber, and Marcus forced himself to focus on the present. The main reactor was a thing of beauty and terror, a contained singularity held in check by fields Marcus barely understood. But even he could see the damage. Scorch marks radiated from several control nodes, and the containment field flickered with unhealthy irregularity. "This is worse than your sensors indicated," he said, pulling out his diagnostic tablet. "The containment field is degrading faster than it should be. Someone didn't just sabotage your reactor. They introduced a progressive algorithm that's eating away at your safety protocols. Can you stop it?" Marcus was already moving, connecting his tablet to the reactor's control systems. "Maybe, but I need to understand something first. This kind of sabotage, it's sophisticated. Whoever did this understood Zalathi technology at a fundamental level. We're not talking about some disgruntled crew member with a grudge. This is someone with deep technical knowledge and access to restricted systems." A new voice spoke from behind them, causing both to turn. "Perhaps you should be looking at yourself then. Human." The speaker was another Zalathi, this one wearing what Marcus recognized as security insignia. Behind him stood 2 more security officers, their postures tense and ready. "Commander Relis," Serenia said, her tone carefully neutral. "What brings you to the reactor chamber?" "My duty," Relis replied, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "We have an unknown alien aboard, One who admits to understanding our technology, who admits to having every reason to hate us. And now, our systems are mysteriously being repaired just enough to keep us alive, but not enough to restore full function. It's almost as if someone wants to prolong our suffering. Marcus laughed, a harsh sound in the tense atmosphere. You think I sabotaged your ship before I even knew it existed, then answered your distress call, just to watch you die slowly. That's either giving me way too much credit or not enough. Or perhaps, Relis stepped forward, his forearms spreading in an aggressive display. You're working with whoever did sabotage us. A human agent, placed here to finish what they started. Commander, Serenia interjected. This is absurd. Captain Hale has done nothing but help us since arriving. Has he? Or has he simply been gathering intelligence, learning our weaknesses? Relis gestured to one of his officers. Secure the human. We'll question him properly. Marcus's hand moved to his sidearm, but he didn't draw it. You want to waste time interrogating me while your ship dies around you? Be my guest. But in about 6 hours, when your life support fails completely, remember that you chose suspicion over survival. The security officer reached for Marcus, but Serenia stepped between them. No, I'm the ranking bridge officer with the captain incapacitated. Captain Hale remains under my protection. You would choose this primitive over your own kind, Relis snarled. I choose life over death, Commander. And right now, this primitive is the only one making progress on our survival. The standoff stretched taut, tension thick enough to cut. Then, Marcus's tablet chimed, breaking the moment. He looked down at it, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm. You can argue about whether to arrest me later, he said urgently. Right now, we have a bigger problem. The sabotage algorithm just accelerated. We've got maybe 2 hours before containment fails completely. That's impossible, Relis said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. The containment field was stable at 60% when I last checked. It's at 42% now and dropping. Marcus showed them the tablet. Someone just triggered a second phase of the sabotage. Someone who's monitoring our progress and doesn't want me to fix this. He looked directly at Relis. So either you just gave our saboteur a signal, or they're watching us right now. Either way, standing here arguing is exactly what they want. A sudden shudder ran through the ship, and the lights flickered ominously. In the distance, an alarm began to wail. Hull breach in Section 12, one of Relis's officers reported, reading from a handheld device. Automatic seals have engaged, but we've lost pressure in 3 compartments. That's where the families are quartered, Serenia breathed, her coloring shifting to a paler shade. Without hesitation, Marcus was moving. We need to get there now. A hull breach this precisely timed isn't an accident. Someone's trying to divide our attention, force us to choose between saving lives and fixing the reactor. And what would you have us do? Relis demanded, following despite his suspicion. We don't choose, Marcus said firmly. Serenia, take me to Section 12. Relis, get Kalor and his best engineers to the reactor. Have them implement these modifications. He thrust his tablet at the security commander. It won't stop the degradation, but it'll slow it down. Buy us maybe an extra hour. You're giving us your only computer. Relis seemed genuinely surprised. I'm giving you a chance to save your ship, Marcus corrected. What you do with it is up to you. They ran through the corridors, Marcus struggling to keep up with the Zelathi's longer strides. As they moved, more crew members joined them, some carrying tools, others medical supplies. Whatever their feelings about humans, they recognized an emergency when they saw one. Section 12 was chaos when they arrived. The hull breach had been contained, but not before explosive decompression had turned the family quarters into a disaster zone. Marcus could hear crying, the high-pitched keen of frightened young ones mixed with the lower tones of injured adults. Through the emergency barriers, he could see the breach itself, a hole roughly 2 meters across. edges too clean to be from an impact or structural failure. This had been cut from the inside. "Plasma cutter," he said to Serenia. "Industrial grade. Probably from your own maintenance supplies." A young Zalathi, one of the ones he'd seen earlier, tugged at his coveralls. Green blood, Marcus noted with clinical detachment, seeped from a cut on the child's head. "My parent," the child said in broken English. "Trapped. Please, human Marcus, help." Marcus looked through the barrier to where several Zalathi were trying to free someone pinned under a fallen structural beam. The area was still partially exposed to vacuum, protected only by an emergency force field that flickered dangerously. "That field's not going to hold," he told Serenia. "We need to get them out now." "It's too dangerous," she replied. "If the field fails—" Marcus was already stripping off his tool belt, keeping only the essentials. "Then I'd better be quick." He cycled through the emergency airlock, feeling the immediate bite of near vacuum through his clothes. The Zalathi he was moving toward had managed to get breathing masks on, but the one trapped under the beam was fading fast, their movements growing sluggish. "Push when I lift," Marcus shouted to the others, grabbing the beam. It was heavier than it looked, designed for Zalathi strength, not human. But Marcus had learned long ago that the human body could do impossible things when lives were on the line. He thought of Sarah, how she'd held a damaged bulkhead door open for 30 seconds so their squad could escape, even though it cost her 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. He lifted, muscles screaming, back threatening to give out. The other Zalathi pushed, and inch by inch, the beam moved. The trapped Zalathi was pulled free just as the force field sparked and failed completely. Marcus felt the vacuum grab him, trying to pull him into space. He managed to grab a support strut, holding on as the emergency systems kicked in, a new force field snapping into place. When the pressure normalized, he dropped to his knees, gasping. The young Zalathi who'd asked for his help was suddenly there, small arms wrapping around him in what was apparently a universal gesture of gratitude. "You saved them. You saved my parent." More Zalathi surrounded him, their voices a mix of languages he didn't understand. But the tone was clear: gratitude, relief, and something that might have been respect. "The human could have died," someone said in accented English. "Why would he risk himself for us?" Marcus stood slowly, his back already telling him he'd pay for that lift later. "Because that's what humans do. We're stupid that way. Remember." Serenia was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "No," she said softly. "Not stupid. Something else. Something we perhaps never understood about your species." A communication panel nearby crackled to life. Kaylor's voice, urgent and strained. "Serenia, we have a problem. The modifications are working, but someone's actively fighting us. Every time we implement a fix, new errors appear. It's like they're in the system, watching everything we do." Marcus moved to the panel. "Kaylor, this is Hale. Are the errors following a pattern?" "Yes, but it makes no sense. They're targeting specific subsystems in sequence. Almost like they're herding you toward a specific solution." Marcus finished. "Don't follow the pattern. In fact, do the opposite. Whatever the errors are pushing you toward, go the other way." "That's insane. It could destabilize the entire reactor." "It's already destabilized. Someone's playing chess with you, and you're following their moves. Stop playing their game." There was a pause. Then the ship shuddered again, but this time it felt different, more controlled, like a giant taking a deep breath. "It's working." Kaylor's voice held wonder. "The degradation is slowing. How did you know?" Marcus glanced at Serenia. "Because it's what I would do. Create a problem with an obvious solution. Let your enemy fix it the way you want them to. Classic misdirection. Humans might be primitive, but we wrote the book on dirty tricks." Relis appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "We found something. In the maintenance logs, someone accessed the reactor control systems 18 hours before the failure. The access codes belonged to medical specialist Thyma. The room went quiet. Thyma, who had been in the command center when Marcus arrived, who had seemed so concerned, so helpful. "Where is Thyma now?" Serenia asked, though from her tone, she already suspected the answer. "Gone," Relis replied. "Took an emergency shuttle 4 hours ago, right after the human arrived. The shuttle's transponder has been disabled, but the last trajectory put it on course for the hegemony border." The hegemony. Even Marcus knew that name. The Zalathis' ancient enemies. A collective of species that had been locked in Cold War with the Zalathi Alliance for centuries. "Thyma was a spy," Serenia said, the words seeming to physically pain her. "All these years, and we never suspected." "They waited for the perfect moment," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "When you were far from help, in disputed space where no one would investigate too closely. Make it look like an accident, or better yet, blame it on the dangerous dead zone." "But they didn't count on you," Relis said, and for the first time, there was no hostility in his voice when he looked at Marcus. "A human answering our distress call. Thyma must have panicked, accelerated the sabotage, then fled when it became clear you might actually save us." Another shudder ran through the ship, this one accompanied by the sound of tearing metal. Marcus grabbed the communication panel. "Kaylor, report. We've slowed the degradation, but the damage is too extensive. The reactor's going to fail. Captain Hale. Maybe not in 2 hours. Maybe not in 6. But soon. We need another solution." Marcus closed his eyes, his mind racing through possibilities. Then, like a flash of lightning, he saw it. Insane, risky, probably fatal, but possible. "I have an idea," he said slowly, "but nobody's going to like it." "You want to do what?" Kaylor's voice through the comm system carried a mix of disbelief and horror that transcended species barriers. Marcus stood in the Starwind's engineering section, surrounded by skeptical Zalathi engineers, his hands working through calculations on a borrowed tablet while he explained his plan for the third time. "Link my ship's reactor to yours. Use the rust bucket as an external power source to stabilize your containment field long enough to perform a controlled shutdown and restart." "That's not just insane," Kaylor said, his forearms gesticulating wildly. "It's technically impossible. The power signatures are completely incompatible. Human technology operates on fusion principles. Ours uses contained singularities. It would be like trying to power a quantum computer with a steam engine." "Not power," Marcus corrected, pulling up a schematic he'd been working on. "Balance. Your reactor isn't failing because it lacks power. It's failing because the containment algorithms are corrupted. My reactor might be primitive by your standards, but it's stable. We can use that stability as a baseline, a metronome for your systems to sync with." Serenia leaned over his shoulder, studying the diagram. Her proximity made Marcus uncomfortably aware of how different yet similar their species were. The faint ozone scent that all Zalathi seemed to carry. The way her secondary arms moved independently, while her primary ones stayed still. The subtle shifts in her skin color that he was beginning to recognize as emotional indicators. "The mathematics are sound," she said slowly, "but the risk is enormous. If the synchronization fails, both reactors could destabilize. We'd lose both ships." "We're going to lose this ship anyway," Marcus pointed out. "Kaylor, how long until containment fails at current degradation rates?" The engineer's skin shifted to a darker blue. What Marcus had learned indicated reluctance or distress. 4 hours, perhaps 5 if we continue manual adjustments. But the crew is exhausting themselves. We can't maintain this pace. "Then we try my plan," Marcus said. "Unless someone has a better idea." The silence that followed was answer enough. Marcus turned to Relis, who had been standing guard by the door, as if still expecting Marcus to reveal himself as an enemy agent. "Commander, I need you to understand something. If we do this, I'm putting my life in your hands. My ship will be completely vulnerable, all her systems slave to yours. If someone wanted to destroy the rust bucket, they could do it with a single command. I'm trusting you not to let that happen." Relis's swirling eyes fixed on Marcus for a long moment. "Why would you take such a risk for us? We are not your people. We were your enemies." Marcus thought of Sarah, of Tom, of all the anger he'd carried for so long. Then he thought of the young Zalathi, who'd hugged him after he saved their parent, of the crew members who'd started nodding to him in the corridors, a gesture of respect among their kind. "Because maybe it's time to stop being enemies," he said simply. "Because out here in the black, we're all just trying to survive. And because," he paused, then admitted the truth, "because I'm tired of being alone." Serenya's hand, her primary right hand, touched his shoulder briefly. The gesture was probably meant to be comforting, but her grip was strong enough to remind him that the Zalathi were physically superior to humans in almost every way. "You won't be alone," she said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Marcus nodded, then turned businesslike. "Right, Kaylor. I need your best engineers. We're going to have to modify the coupling interfaces on both ships. Serenya, can you coordinate with my ship's AI? It's not much, just a basic assistant program, but it needs to be prepared for the link." "What will you be doing?" Relis asked. "The fun part," Marcus said with a grim smile. "I'm going EVA to manually connect the power conduits. Can't risk using the docking ports. Too much interference. This has to be a direct connection." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Marcus worked alongside Zalathi engineers, their initial skepticism gradually giving way to grudging respect as he demonstrated not just knowledge of their technology, but an intuitive understanding of how to bridge the gap between human and Zalathi systems. "How do you know this will work?" one young engineer asked, her secondary arms delicately adjusting a coupling, while her primary arms held it in place. "I don't," Marcus admitted, checking the seals on his EVA suit. "But I once saw a human ship jury-rig a connection to a Altarian freighter to share life support. Different technologies, different species. But in the end, physics is physics. Energy is energy. We just have to find the common language." He was running final checks on his equipment when Serenya approached, carrying something wrapped in a shimmering cloth. "This is a personal shield generator," she said, unwrapping the device. It was surprisingly small, about the size of a human fist, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. "It's not much, but it might protect you if something goes wrong out there." Marcus took the device, feeling its unexpected warmth. "Zalathi don't share technology with other species. It's like your prime directive or something." "Zalathi don't usually owe their lives to other species either," Serenya countered. "Besides, you're not exactly following human protocols by helping us." "Fair point." Marcus attached the generator to his suit's utility belt. "Though if this works, I expect one hell of a commendation letter for my non-existent service record." Serenya made that tinkling sound he'd learned was laughter. "If this works, Captain Hale, you'll have something far more valuable than commendations." "What's that?" "Friends." The word hung between them for a moment, heavy with possibility. Then Marcus cleared his throat and turned toward the airlock. "Right. Well, time to go do something stupidly heroic. If I don't make it back, tell Kaylor he was right about this being insane." The void between the two ships was only about 50 meters, but it felt like an eternity. Marcus pulled himself along the cable he'd secured, trying not to think about how many things could go wrong. The rust bucket looked even more pathetic next to the Starwind, like a tugboat parked next to a cruise ship. He reached the connection point and began the delicate process of exposing the power conduits. The work was familiar, even in the cumbersome EVA suit. His hands moved with practiced precision, years of maintaining his own ship in desperate circumstances, having taught him that in space. Careful was fast, and fast was dead. "Marcus," Serenya's voice crackled through his helmet comm. "We're reading an anomaly. There's another ship on long-range sensors, approaching fast." Marcus's blood went cold. "How long?" "At their current speed, 40 minutes. It's a hegemony interceptor, military grade." Of course, Thyma hadn't just run. She'd called in backup to finish the job. Marcus worked faster, his fingers flying over the connections. "Can you run?" "Not without power," Kalor's voice cut in. "And even if we could, we can't outrun an interceptor." "What about weapons?" "Minimal. We're a research vessel. Remember, we have defensive screens and some mining lasers. Nothing that could stop a military ship." Marcus made a decision. "Then we make sure this works. Kalor, start the synchronization sequence as soon as I make the final connection. Don't wait for my signal." "That could electrocute you." "Better than letting that interceptor finish what Thyma started." He made the final connection, and immediately his suit's systems went haywire. Electricity arced across the conduits, and the personal shield generator Serenya had given him activated automatically, surrounding him in a shimmering bubble of energy that probably saved his life. Through the chaos of sparking connections and system alerts, Marcus heard Kalor shouting over the comm. "It's working! The synchronization is holding, Marcus. Get back inside now." But Marcus wasn't done. He pulled a small device from his utility pouch, something he'd grabbed from the Rust Bucket's emergency supplies. It was a military-grade transponder, the kind used to mark targets for friendly fire. He'd kept it as a memento from his service days, never imagining he'd use it again. He activated it and attached it to the power coupling, then began pulling himself back along the cable as fast as he could. Behind him, the connection between the two ships pulsed with energy, a visible bridge of light against the darkness. He was halfway back when the hegemony interceptor dropped out of FTL, its sleek, predatory form immediately orienting toward the Starwind. Marcus could see its weapons powering up, the distinctive green glow of plasma cannons preparing to fire. "Incoming!" he shouted, pulling himself faster along the cable. The first salvo missed, the interceptor's targeting systems apparently confused by the energy signature of the linked ships. The second salvo was more accurate, slamming into the Starwind's defensive screens with enough force to send Marcus spinning on his cable. He managed to grab hold again, pulling himself the last few meters to the airlock. As he cycled through, he could hear chaos over the comms. The Zalathi crew was panicking, their research vessel never designed for combat. Marcus burst onto the bridge, still in his EVA suit minus the helmet. "Relis, can you access my ship's weapon systems through the link?" The security commander looked at him in confusion. "Your mining lasers. They won't even scratch an interceptor's hull." "Not the lasers," Marcus said, pulling up his ship's remote access on a console. "I've got 3 old torpedo tubes, military surplus. They're loaded with survey probes. But the interceptor doesn't know that." "Decoys. Better. Remember that transponder I placed? It's broadcasting a Federation military signature. If we time this right..." Marcus's fingers flew over the controls, reprogramming the survey probe's telemetry. "There. Launching in 3, 2, 1. 3 objects shot from the Rust Bucket toward the interceptor. To any scanning system, they looked like military-grade torpedoes, homing in on a marked target. The interceptor immediately took evasive action, its captain clearly not willing to risk calling Marcus's bluff. "They're pulling back," Serenya reported, amazement in her voice. "But they're not leaving. They're waiting just outside of effective weapons range." "They're being cautious," Marcus said, trying to figure out why a human military vessel is defending a Zalathi research ship. But that confusion won't last long. "How's the reactor?" "Stabilizing," Kaylor reported from engineering. The synchronization is holding, but it's drawing heavily on your ship's reactor. How long can the rust bucket maintain this output? Marcus checked his ship's readings and winced. Maybe an hour before my reactor overloads. Less if we have to maneuver. Then we need another solution, Relis said. The interceptor is hailing us. Put it through! The main view screen lit up with the image of a hegemony commander, a reptilian Scarth whose scales were painted with combat honors. Marcus recognized the pattern. Veteran of multiple engagements, probably handpicked for this mission. Zalathi vessel, the Scarth hissed. You will surrender immediately. Your spy has provided us with your shield frequencies and defensive capabilities. Resistance is futile. Marcus stepped forward, making sure he was visible on the transmission. Hegemony vessel. This is Captain Marcus Hale of the Terran Federation Navy. The Starwind is under my protection. Any attack on this vessel will be considered an act of war against Earth and her colonies. The Scarth's eyes narrowed, focusing on Marcus. The Federation has no jurisdiction here, human. And according to our intelligence, you are no longer a Federation officer. You're a deserter, flying a decommissioned freighter. Your intelligence is out of date. Marcus lied smoothly. I'm on a classified mission, hence the civilian vessel disguise. Check your records for Operation Broken Arrow. You'll find it's a Federation Black Ops designation for deniable operations in neutral space. There was no Operation Broken Arrow. Of course. But Marcus was counting on the hegemony's paranoia about human black ops. A reputation earned through decades of asymmetric warfare where humans had proven terrifyingly creative. The Scarth commander paused, clearly consulting with someone off-screen. Marcus used the time to whisper urgently to Serenia. Can you access your research data from here specifically? Anything about the gravitational anomalies you've been studying? She looked confused but nodded. Yes, but why? Because we're about to science our way out of this. Pull up everything you have on artificial singularity creation. Understanding dawned in her swirling eyes. You want to threaten them with creating a black hole? No, Marcus said with a dangerous grin. I want to actually create one. A small one. Just big enough to make them think twice. Kaylor's voice crackled over the comm. That's insane. Even a micro-singularity could destroy both ships if it's not perfectly controlled. Then we'd better control it perfectly, Marcus shot back. Unless you have a better idea for dealing with a military interceptor. The Scarth commander returned to the screen. Captain Hale, we have no record of Operation Broken Arrow. You have 5 minutes to stand down, or we will open fire. Commander, Marcus said calmly, are you familiar with human history specifically? A battle called Thermopylae. The Scarth's head tilted, confused by the apparent non sequitur. What relevance does ancient human history have to this situation? 300 warriors held off an army of thousands. Not because they were stronger, but because they chose the right ground and were willing to die rather than yield. Marcus gestured to the space around them. This is my Thermopylae, Commander. I have a ship full of Zalathi civilians, including young ones. I have a reactor linked between two vessels that, if it destabilizes, will create an explosion visible 3 systems away, and I have absolutely nothing left to lose. He paused, letting that sink in. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to report back to your superiors that the mission failed. Thyma's sabotage was discovered and reversed. The Starwind is under human protection, and any attack on it risks starting a war the hegemony doesn't want. You're bluffing, the Scarth said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Am I? Marcus turned to Serenia. Show them! Serenia pulled up the gravitational research data, equations and simulations filling the screen. It was all theoretical, but to someone unfamiliar with the specific research, it would look like a blueprint for creating an artificial singularity. Your spy didn't tell you what the Starwind was really researching, did they? Marcus said. Gravitational weapons. The kind that make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. And right now, with our reactors linked and destabilizing, we're one miscalculation away from turning this entire sector into a gravity well. The Scarth commander was definitely consulting with others now. The transmission muted on their end. Marcus used the time to coordinate with Kalor. Can you actually create a micro-singularity? Just for a few seconds. Enough to show on their sensors. It would be incredibly dangerous, Kalor replied. But theoretically possible. We'd need to overload one of the containment field generators. Create a localized collapse. It would last maybe 3 seconds before evaporating. Do it. Captain Hale, Serenia said quietly. If this doesn't work, then we die fighting instead of running, Marcus replied. That's the human way. Stupid, but memorable. The Scarth commander returned. You have 2 minutes to prove your claims, human. Show us this gravitational weapon, or we open fire. Marcus nodded to Kalor. Through the view screen, they could all see a point of absolute darkness form, about a kilometer from the Starwind. It was tiny, barely a meter across, but the gravitational distortion it created was unmistakable. Debris from the surrounding area began spiraling toward it, and both ships shuddered as they felt its pull. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it evaporated, leaving only swirling particles and very nervous hegemony officers. As you can see, Marcus said calmly, though his heart was racing, we're not bluffing. That was a controlled demonstration. Imagine what happens if our reactors fully destabilize. The silence stretched for long moments. Then, the Scarth commander spoke, his tone grudging but clear. Hegemony Command has ordered our withdrawal. But know this, human, you've made enemies today. The hegemony does not forget. Get in line, Marcus muttered as the interceptor turned and jumped to FTL. As soon as the threat was gone, Marcus collapsed into a chair, exhaustion hitting him like a physical force. Around him, the Zalathi crew erupted in celebration, their tinkling laughter filling the bridge. We did it, Serenia said, disbelief coloring her voice. We actually survived. Not yet, Marcus reminded her, checking his ship's status. My reactor's still redlining. We need to disconnect the ships before the rust bucket overloads. No, Kalor's voice came over the comm, stronger and more confident than Marcus had ever heard it. Captain, the synchronization worked better than we hoped. Our reactor is stabilizing. We can maintain our own power now. Initiating separation sequence. Marcus felt the subtle shift as the two ships disconnected, the energy bridge between them fading. His poor Rust Bucket's reactor immediately began cooling down, systems returning to normal, if somewhat strained parameters. You saved us, Rella said, and for the first time, the security commander's tone held genuine respect. A human saved a Zalathi crew. No one will believe this. They will, Serenia said, because we'll tell them. We'll tell everyone how Captain Marcus Hale risked everything to save people who were once his enemies. Marcus stood, swaying slightly. Right now, I'd settle for something to eat that doesn't taste like recycled protein, and a place to sleep that doesn't smell like burnt electronics. You'll have both, Serenia promised. And more, Captain Hale, by the traditions of my people. You've earned the right of sanctuary. The Starwind is your home for as long as you wish it. Marcus looked around the bridge, at the alien faces that no longer seemed quite so alien. Sanctuary. Huh. Does that come with better coffee? Because the stuff I've been drinking tastes like engine coolant. The laughter that followed was universal, transcending species barriers. But even as Marcus joined in, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The hegemony would be back, and Thyma was still out there. The game had changed, but it wasn't over. Captain, one of the junior officers called out. We're receiving a transmission. It's from Thyma. The bridge went silent. Marcus and Serenia exchanged glances, Then Serenia nodded. Put it through. Thyma's face appeared on the screen, her expression unreadable. I see you survived. I suppose I should congratulate you on your resourcefulness. You tried to murder 32 people, Serenia said, her voice cold with controlled anger. People who trusted you, children who looked up to you. I did what was necessary for the greater good, Thyma replied. The Zalathi alliance has grown weak, complacent. The hegemony offers strength, purpose. You'll understand in time. The only thing I understand, Marcus cut in, is that you're a coward who ran instead of facing the consequences of your actions. Thyma's eyes fixed on him. The human. How unexpected. Tell me, Captain Hale, do you really think you've won? You've delayed the inevitable. Nothing more. The hegemony has plans within plans. Your little victory today means nothing. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But we're alive, and you're running. That's enough for now. Thyma's image flickered. This isn't over. For any of you. The transmission ended, leaving them in contemplative silence. Marcus was the first to speak. Well, that was ominous. Anyone else feel like we just got threatened by a villain in a bad holodrama? She's not wrong, though, Relis said grimly. The hegemony won't give up. And now they know the Starwind survived. They'll want to know what we discovered in our research. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for them, Marcus said. Kaelor, how long until the Starwind is fully operational? With the reactor stabilized, maybe 36 hours for basic systems. Full operational capacity. A week, perhaps 2. Then we have work to do. Marcus turned to Serenia. You mentioned sanctuary. Does that invitation extend to letting me help with repairs? Because I've got some ideas about upgrading your defensive systems. Serenia's skin shifted to what he'd learned was amusement. A human wanting to modify Zalathi technology. Our engineers will have collective apoplexy. Good, Marcus grinned. Shaking things up is what humans do best. Besides, after today, I think it's clear that maybe, just maybe, human and Zalathi technology work better together than anyone expected. As the crew dispersed to begin repairs, Serenia lingered beside Marcus. You could have left us to die, after what our people did to yours. No one would have blamed you. Marcus thought of Sarah, of Tom, of all the anger he'd carried. It was still there, but somehow it felt lighter now. Revenge doesn't bring anyone back. It just creates more emptiness. Today, I chose to fill that emptiness with something else. With what? Marcus looked at her. This alien who was becoming something he'd never expected a friend. With hope. That maybe the future doesn't have to look like the past. Serenia's primary hand touched his shoulder again. And this time, Marcus didn't notice the strength of her grip. He only felt the connection, fragile but real, between two people who'd found understanding in the vast darkness between stars. The next 3 days passed in a blur of repairs and revelations. Marcus had essentially moved onto the Starwind, his quarters on the rust bucket too damaged from the reactor strain to be habitable. The Zalathi had given him a cabin that, well designed for someone half a meter taller, with an extra pair of arms, was more luxurious than anything he'd had in years. He was elbow-deep in a power distribution node when he heard the distinctive sound of Zalathi younglings giggling. Looking up, he saw 3 small faces peering at him from around a corner, their swirling eyes wide with curiosity. It's rude to stare, he said mildly, not stopping his work. Either come help or find something else to do. The younglings whispered among themselves in their own language. Then the bravest one, the same child whose parent he'd saved during the hull breach, stepped forward. Can we watch? The child asked in improving English. Parent says you fix things different. Want to see? Marcus considered, then nodded. Fine. But if you're going to watch, you're going to learn. What's your name? I am called Zarek, the young Zalathi said, moving closer. These are Mila and Torvin. All right, Zarek, Mila, Torvin. First lesson in human engineering, we call it percussive maintenance. Marcus gave the stuck node a calculated hit with his wrench. It hummed to life. Sometimes, things just need a good whack to remember what they're supposed to do. The younglings made that tinkling laugh sound. And soon, Marcus found himself with an eager audience as he worked. He explained what he was doing in simple terms, occasionally letting them hold tools or shine lights into tight spaces. Their secondary arms, he discovered, were perfect for reaching into cramped areas his human hands couldn't access. "Why you help us?" Mila asked suddenly. "Other humans on the network say Zalathi are bad. Say we are cold, no feelings." Marcus paused in his work, considering how to answer. "Do you know what the humans on the network say about me?" The younglings shook their heads. "Nothing, because I'm nobody to them. Just another washed-up soldier who couldn't cut it. But here, on this ship, I'm the guy who helped save everyone. Which opinion do you think matters more to me?" "Ours," Zarek suggested tentatively. "Smart kid. The truth is, everyone's the villain in someone else's story. Humans think Zalathi are cold and calculating. Zalathi think humans are primitive and violent. But look at us now, working together, learning from each other. Maybe the networks don't know everything." Torvin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "You were prisoner of Zalathi. They hurt you. Why you not hate us?" Marcus's hand went unconsciously to the scar on his face. "I did hate you, all of you, for a long time. That hate was all that kept me going. But hate's like a reactor running too hot. Eventually, it burns everything out, including you. I had to choose keep hating and destroy myself, or let it go and maybe find something better." "And you found us," Zarek said with the simple certainty of youth. "Yeah," Marcus said softly, surprised by the truth of it. "I guess I did." A soft chime indicated someone at his cabin door that evening. Marcus opened it to find Serenia holding a tray with 2 containers of liquid and what looked like actual cooked food rather than protein cubes. "I thought you might appreciate something more palatable," she said. "Our cook has been experimenting with human-compatible recipes from our database." Marcus invited her in, grateful for both the food and the company. The dish turned out to be something like pasta, with a sauce that tasted vaguely of seafood and spices he couldn't identify. It was strange but good, certainly better than his usual fare. "The younglings speak highly of you," Serenia said as they ate. "Zarek hasn't stopped talking about percussive maintenance, and how humans fix things with violence that isn't really violence." Marcus chuckled. "Kids are kids, no matter the species. They just want someone to pay attention to them, teach them things. You're good with them. It surprises the crew. They expected humans to be—" She paused, searching for words. "Brutish, aggressive, eating our meat raw while beating our chests." Serenia's skin shifted to the purple pink of embarrassment. "Something like that. Your popular media doesn't exactly show your species' subtler qualities." "Yeah, well, humans love their action movies. Easier to blow things up on screen than show the quiet moments." Marcus took a sip of his drink, finding it pleasantly warming. "What about Zalathi media? What do you show about yourselves?" "Complex philosophical debates, artistic exhibitions, mathematical proofs rendered as symphonies," Serenia replied. "Nothing about the fear we feel when our young are threatened, or the way we gather for comfort during crisis, or how we sometimes make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. So we're all liars, basically, showing only what we want others to see. Perhaps we show what we aspire to be, rather than what we are." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, before Serenia spoke again. "Kaylor has been analyzing your modifications to our systems. He's grudgingly impressed. He wants to know where you learned to think in what he calls productive chaos." "Prison," Marcus said simply. When you have limited resources and desperate need, you learn to see connections others miss. A heating element from a food processor can become part of an air recycler. A medical scanner can be rewired into a communication device. Chaos isn't the absence of order. It's just order you haven't recognized yet. You speak like a philosopher. I speak like someone who's had too much time alone with his thoughts. Marcus set down his container, his expression growing serious. Serenia, we need to talk about what comes next. The hegemony will be back, and probably with more than one ship. The Starwind can't fight them, even with my modifications. I know. Serenia's shoulders sagged slightly. We've been discussing options. We could run deeper into the dead zone, but that's just delaying the inevitable. Or we could return to Zalathi space. But after being compromised by a spy, we'd face extensive interrogation. Some of the crew might be suspected as collaborators. There's a third option, Marcus said carefully. Come with me. Serenia's eyes swirled rapidly, indicating surprise. What do you mean? I mean exactly that. The Rust Bucket and the Starwind, traveling together. We've already proven our ships can work in tandem. Together, we're stronger than apart. A human and a Zalathi crew, working together permanently, the political implications alone. Forget politics, Marcus interrupted. I'm talking about survival. About 32 people who need protection and one human who's tired of being alone. We stay in the border regions, take on salvage jobs, research contracts, whatever keeps us flying. We watch each other's backs. And when the hegemony finds us, or when the Zalathi Alliance demands our return, then we face it together, like we did 3 days ago. Serenia stood and walked to the small viewport in his cabin, looking out at the stars. You're suggesting we become outlaws, exiles. I'm suggesting we become free, Marcus corrected. No governments, no military obligations, no ancient prejudices, just us, making our own way. The crew would have to vote. It's not a decision I can make alone. I know, but Serenia. Marcus joined her at the viewport. What's waiting for you back in Zalathi space? More research missions to nowhere. Always wondering if another spy is among you, and what's waiting for me in human space. Nothing. But out here, together, we might actually build something new. Before Serenia could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the ship. They rushed to the bridge, finding Relis already at the tactical station. Report, Serenia commanded. Multiple contacts emerging from FTL, Relis said grimly. 6 ships. Configuration suggests hegemony, but... He paused, confusion evident. 2 of them are broadcasting Zalathi military signatures. Marcus felt his blood chill. It's a joint operation. Thyma didn't just defect to the hegemony. She was part of something bigger. Someone in the Zalathi military is working with them. On the main screen, the ships arranged themselves in an attack formation. The lead Zalathi vessel hailed them. This is Admiral Krex of the Zalathi Defense Force. Starwind. You are ordered to surrender immediately. You're suspected of harboring dangerous research and collaborating with hostile forces. Hostile forces, Serenia said incredulously. You mean the human who saved our lives? The human is to be detained as well, Krex continued. His presence only confirms the corruption of your mission. Surrender now, or be destroyed. Marcus studied the tactical display. 6 ships against their 2 damaged vessels. The odds were impossible. Unless... Serenia, he said quietly. How much of your gravitational research is actually weapon applicable? In theory, most of it. In practice, we've never tested it beyond simulations. Time to change that, Kaelor, Marcus called over comm. Remember that micro-singularity we created. Can we do it again, but bigger and more controlled? Define controlled, Kaelor replied nervously. Controlled enough to put it between us and them. A gravitational barrier they can't shoot through without their weapons fire being bent back at them. There was a pause. That's theoretically possible, but the power requirements would be enormous. We'd have to channel everything through the main reactor, and if we lose containment, we're dead anyway if those ships open fire, Marcus pointed out. At least this way, we go out swinging. Serenia looked at him, then at her crew. Marcus could see the moment she made her decision. Do it. All hands. This is the captain. Prepare for gravitational manipulation. Secure all loose objects and brace for spatial distortion. You have 1 minute to comply, Admiral Krex announced. Marcus's fingers flew over his console, establishing a link with the Rust Bucket systems. I'm going to use my ship as an anchor point. If we can create the singularity between the two ships and then move them apart, we can stretch it into a barrier. That's insane, Relis said, but he was already working to implement it. The stress on both hulls will be incredible. Good thing I reinforced the connection points, Marcus muttered. Kaylor, on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The space between the Starwind and the Rust Bucket began to twist. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and then a point of absolute darkness appeared. But instead of collapsing into a sphere, Marcus and Kaylor stretched it, pulling it into a disk of distorted spacetime that light seemed to fall into and never escape. The enemy ships immediately opened fire, but their energy beams curved wildly as they hit the gravitational distortion, some bending back toward their origins, others spiraling off into space. It's working, someone shouted. But Marcus could see the strain on both ships' reactors. They had minutes at most before something catastrophically failed. Serenia, he said urgently. Remember what I said about chaos being unrecognized order. I need you to trust me completely right now. She looked at him, and in that moment, the alien differences between them seemed to disappear. I trust you. Good, because we're going to collapse the barrier into a directed gravitational wave and ride it out of here like a cosmic surfboard.
That's not possible.
3 days ago, linking our reactors wasn't possible either. Marcus's hands were already reconfiguring the field parameters. Kaylor, when I give the signal, reverse the polarity on the containment field. Don't think about it. Just do it. The enemy ships had stopped firing, realizing their weapons were useless against the barrier. They were beginning to move to flank it when Marcus gave the order. Now, the gravitational barrier collapsed, but instead of dissipating, the energy released pushed outward in a focused wave. Both the Starwind and the Rust Bucket were caught in it, accelerated instantly to a significant fraction of light speed. The enemy ships, caught off guard, were scattered by the gravitational turbulence. For several terrifying seconds, both ships rode the wave through space, their hulls groaning under the stress. Then, they dropped back into normal space, far from their attackers. Systems check, Serenia ordered, though she was gripping her chair with white-knuckled intensity. Hull integrity holding, Relis reported, amazement in his voice. Minor breaches on decks 4 and 5, but emergency seals are holding. The Rust Bucket, Marcus asked anxiously. Battered but intact, Kaylor confirmed, though I don't think either ship could survive doing that again. Once was enough, Marcus said, slumping in his chair. We're at least 3 light hours from their position. By the time they regroup and follow, we'll be long gone. Gone where, Relis asked. We've just defied both the Zalathi military and the hegemony. There's nowhere in civilized space we'll be safe. Marcus looked around the bridge at the mixed expressions of fear, exhaustion, and something else. Hope, maybe, or determination. Then we make our own safe place, he said. The dead zone is full of hidden bases, abandoned stations, places where people who don't fit anywhere else make their homes. We find one, fix it up, and create something new. A place where human and Zalathi work together, where anyone who needs sanctuary can find it. A home, Zarek's young voice piped up from the doorway where several younglings had gathered, having broken free from their guardians during the chaos. Zarek, an adult Zalathi, called, moving to collect the child. "No, let him stay," Serenia said softly. "This decision affects them too." She looked at the assembled crew, both on the bridge and those listening over comm. "We have a choice. We can try to go back, face interrogation, and possibly imprisonment for defying orders. Or we can go forward, into uncertainty, but free to make our own destiny." "With the human," someone asked. "With Captain Hale," Serenia corrected firmly. "Who has saved us multiple times. Who has risked his life for people who were once his enemies. Who has shown us that perhaps the divisions between our species are not as insurmountable as we believed." Kalor's voice came over the comm. "I never thought I'd say this, but I stand with the human. He thinks in ways we don't, sees possibilities we miss. If we're going to survive as exiles, we need that perspective." One by one, the crew voiced their agreement. Even Relis, who had been most suspicious of Marcus, nodded his consent. "Then it's decided," Serenia announced. "We go forward, together." Marcus felt something shift inside him. A weight he'd carried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. The anger, the need for revenge, the bitter loneliness. It was all still there, but smaller somehow, overshadowed by something larger. "There's an old human saying," he said. "The family you choose is stronger than the family you're born with." I never understood it until now. Serenia moved to stand beside him, her hand touching his shoulder, in what had become a familiar gesture. "Then welcome to the family, Marcus Hale." The next several hours were spent plotting a course deeper into the dead zone, toward a sector Marcus knew from his smuggling days that had several abandoned mining stations. As they worked, he found himself constantly surrounded by crew members, asking questions, offering suggestions, integrating him into their processes as naturally as if he'd always been there. Zarek had attached himself to Marcus as an unofficial assistant, his small hands helping with tasks while chattering constantly in a mix of English and Zalathi. The other younglings gradually joined, their initial fear completely forgotten. "You know," Relis said during a brief break, "when you first came aboard, I was certain you would betray us. It seemed impossible that a human would truly help Zalathi without ulterior motive." "And now," Marcus asked, "now I think perhaps both our species have been fools, letting old wounds and misunderstandings keep us apart. What we accomplished today, the gravitational wave, neither human nor Zalathi science could have achieved that alone. It took both perspectives, both approaches." "Productive chaos," Marcus said with a slight smile. "The best kind." As the two ships traveled deeper into the dead zone, now truly alone but somehow more complete than before, Marcus found himself on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before him, no longer cold and distant, but full of possibility. Serenia joined him, as he'd somehow known she would. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Throwing your lot in with us, you could have left after we stabilized our reactor. No one would have blamed you." Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. 3 days ago, I was ready to die. Not actively seeking it, but not avoiding it either. I was just existing, drifting through space with no purpose, no connections, nothing but old anger to keep me company. And now I have 32 reasons to keep living. 32 people who need me, who I need in return." He paused, then added quietly, "Especially one." Serenia's skin shifted to a color he hadn't seen before, a soft luminescence that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. "Marcus, I need you to understand something, what I feel, what's developing between us. It's not just gratitude. It's not just the intensity of shared danger." "I know," Marcus said simply. "I feel it too, and it terrifies me more than any battle I've ever faced." "Why?" "Because battles end. One way or another. They're over quickly. But this could last. This could matter. And I don't know if I remember how to let something matter. Serenya's primary hand took his, her 4 fingers wrapping around his 5, in a grip that was alien, yet perfectly right. Then, we'll remember together. We'll build something new, not just for our crews, but for us. A future neither of our species imagined. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, marveling at how natural it felt. "The family we choose," he murmured. "The family we choose," she agreed. A chime from the communication system interrupted the moment. It was Kaylor, his voice excited. "Captain Hale, Captain Serenya, you need to see this. We've detected an energy signature ahead. It's an old station. Terran design but modified with technologies I don't recognize. It appears to be abandoned, but still powered." Marcus and Serenya exchanged glances, then headed for the bridge. On the main screen, a station appeared, rotating slowly in the void. It was indeed human in basic design, but additions had been made. Organic-looking structures that seemed almost Zolothi, and other modifications that belonged to neither species.
It's beautiful,
Someone whispered. "It's perfect," Marcus said. "A hybrid station, just like our hybrid crew, Kaylor. Any life signs?" "None. But the power signature is strange. It's like the station is waiting for something, or someone." As they approached, lights began flickering on throughout the station, section by section, as if welcoming them home. "I'm reading an automated message," Relis reported. "It's in multiple languages. Wait, this can't be right. What is it?" Relis looked up, confusion and wonder in his swirling eyes. "It says, 'Welcome, Bridges of Tomorrow. Your new home awaits.' And it's dated. It's dated 50 years from now." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "A temporal anomaly, or a message from the future," Serenya suggested. "The dead zone is full of gravitational anomalies. Some theorists believe they could create temporal distortions." "A mystery for another day," Marcus decided. "Right now, we have a station to explore and a new home to claim." As the 2 ships docked with the station, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was meant to be. That every choice, every moment of pain and loss, had led to this. A human and a Zolothi crew, working together, building something unprecedented. The family they chose? The station's airlock hissed open, revealing corridors that seemed to breathe with dormant life. Marcus led the first exploration team, accompanied by Serenya, Relis, and surprisingly, Kaylor, who had insisted on examining the hybrid technology firsthand. "The atmosphere is stable," Kaylor reported, checking his scanner. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix suitable for both our species. Temperature optimal. It's as if someone prepared it for us." Marcus finished, running his hand along a wall that felt warm to the touch. The surface was neither fully metal nor organic, but something in between, like living metal that pulsed faintly with energy. They moved deeper into the station, finding room after room of perfectly preserved facilities. Living quarters that seemed designed for both human and Zolothi physiology. A medical bay with equipment that incorporated technologies from multiple species. A hydroponics garden where earth plants grew alongside Zolothi flora in impossible harmony. "This shouldn't exist," Relis said, his voice hushed. "The technology's integrated here. Some of them haven't been invented yet. That medical scanner, it's using quantum entanglement principles that are still theoretical." "The message said it was from 50 years in the future," Serenya reminded them. "Perhaps this station is exactly that, a gift from tomorrow." They reached what appeared to be the command center, and as they entered, holographic displays sparked to life. But instead of data or controls, they showed images. Images of humans and Zolothi working together, of children of both species playing in corridors very much like these, of ships bearing mixed crews exploring distant stars. And then, in the center of the room, a figure materialized, A hologram, but so detailed it seemed almost real. It was an elderly human woman, her hair silver white, her face lined with years, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. Beside her stood an elderly Zalathi, his scales dulled with age but standing with dignity. "Hello, Marcus," the woman said, and Marcus felt his heart stop.
That's impossible,
He breathed.
Sarah.
The hologram smiled sadly. "Not your Sarah, Marcus. I'm sorry. I'm Sarah Henriks Velen, granddaughter of the Sarah you knew. And this is my partner, Kalor Velen, grandson of the Kalor with you now." Kalor made a sound of shock, his forearms gesturing wildly.
This is a trick. It has to be.
"Not a trick," the elderly Kalor in the hologram said.
A temporal echo. The dead zone's gravitational anomalies don't just bend space, they bend time. This station exists in a stable temporal loop, a gift from the future that helps create that very future.
Marcus's mind reeled. Sarah had a child, but she died in the prison camp. The holographic Sarah shook her head.
That's what you were told.
What everyone was told. But the truth, Marcus, is far more complex. Please, sit. All of you. There's much you need to know. Numbly, they found seats in the command center as the holograms continued. The war between humans and the Zalathi Alliance was orchestrated. Sarah began. Not by either of our governments, but by the hegemony. They played both sides, feeding false intelligence, arranging betrayals, ensuring our species would fear and hate each other. The Battle of Kepler Station, the elderly Kalor continued, was their masterpiece. They arranged for the Zalathi forces to be there, leaked the patrol routes to ensure maximum casualties, and made sure survivors on both sides would carry hatred for generations. Marcus felt his world tilting. But why? Because separately, humans and Zalathi are manageable threats to hegemony expansion, Sarah explained. But together, human adaptability and creativity combined with Zalathi technology and discipline, we become unstoppable. The hegemony recognized this decades ago and took steps to ensure our species would never unite. The prison camp where you were held, Marcus, the elderly Kalor said gently, was actually a hegemony facility disguised as Zalathi. The real Zalathi military tried to rescue human prisoners multiple times, but were always repelled, making them look like aggressors. "No," Marcus said, standing abruptly. "No. I saw Zalathi guards. They tortured us. They killed Tom. They killed Sarah." "You saw hegemony operatives surgically altered to look like Zalathi," Sarah said softly. "The same way Thyma was altered to infiltrate the Starwind. The hegemony has been playing this game for a very long time." Serenia had been silent until now, but she spoke up, her voice shaking. "The research mission, our gravitational studies, they weren't randomly assigned, were they?" The holograms exchanged glances, and the elderly Kalor nodded. "The Zalathi Science Council, at least the parts not compromised by hegemony influence, suspected the truth. They sent the Starwind to the dead zone, hoping you would encounter human vessels, hoping contact might lead to understanding." "They used us as bait," Relis said angrily. "They gave you an opportunity," Sarah corrected. "The same opportunity Marcus was given when he received your distress signal. The choice to overcome hatred and fear. The choice that changes everything." Marcus sank back into his chair, his mind struggling to process everything. If this is true, if the hegemony orchestrated everything, then my hatred, my need for revenge, was exactly what they wanted, Serenia said, understanding flooding her features. She moved to Marcus, taking his hand. "They wanted you broken, angry, isolated. Instead, you chose to save us. You chose connection over isolation, love over hate. And in doing so," the elderly Sarah said with a warm smile, "you began the chain of events that leads to this station, to the future we represent."
A future where human and Zalathi not only coexist but thrive together. Where our children grow up seeing no difference between the species except interesting diversity.
But, Admiral Krex, Kalor said, the Zalathi ships that came with the hegemony.
Some in both our governments are compromised, the elderly Kalor admitted. But not all. Even now, in your time, there are those working to expose the truth. Your survival, your choice to work together, is proof that the hegemony's plan can fail.
The command center's displays shifted, showing star charts and data streams.
This station, Sarah continued, contains everything you need. Technology to defend yourselves, medical facilities to treat both species, educational programs for the younglings. Most importantly, it contains the truth. Documented evidence of the hegemony's manipulation, gathered over 50 years of investigation.
Why don't you just tell everyone? Marcus asked. Broadcast the truth across the galaxy.
Because truth without trust is just noise, the elderly Sarah replied. But you, Marcus, and you, Serenia, you're living proof. A human and Zalathi crew working together, surviving together, building something together. You're the evidence that can't be dismissed or suppressed. Others will come, the elderly Kalor added. Humans and Zalathi, who sense something wrong with the official narratives. Refugees from the conflict, those seeking a different path. This station will be their sanctuary, and from here, the truth will spread, not as propaganda, but as lived experience. The holograms began to fade, but Sarah had one more thing to say. Marcus, I know you carry guilt about my grandmother. Don't. She died free, fighting in her own way. Her last message, which the hegemony suppressed, was one word: unite. She saw the truth even then. As the holograms disappeared, the command center's displays showed a final message. The station is yours. Build the future we've seen. Build it better. Silence filled the room for long moments as they processed everything they'd learned. Finally, Rella spoke. If this is true, we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to both our species.
It's true, Marcus said with certainty. It explains too much to be false. The inconsistencies in the prison camp, the way the Zalathi tactics never quite matched their reputation, the convenient timing of betrayals.
The question is, Serenia said, what do we do with this truth?
Before anyone could answer, an alarm chimed. Kalor checked his scanner, his skin shifting to show alarm.
Ships approaching. Multiple contacts. He paused, reading the data. Wait, these signatures. They're not military. They're civilian. 2 human vessels and 1 Zalathi, all running damaged, broadcasting distress signals.
Marcus and Serenia exchanged glances. Then Marcus activated the station's communication system. Approaching vessels. This is Station Haven. We receive your distress signals. You're welcome to dock for repairs and resupply. There was a pause. Then, a human voice, young and scared, came through. Station Haven. The charts show nothing here. Who are you?
We're people who've chosen a different path, Marcus replied. Human and Zalathi, working together. If you're running from the war, from the lies, you're safe here.
Another pause. Then a different voice. Zalathi this time. Humans and Zalathi together. That's impossible.
Serenia took the comm. A week ago, I would have agreed. But impossible is just another word for unprecedented. Dock and see for yourself.
Over the next hours, 3 battered ships docked with the station. Their crews, exhausted and wary, emerged to find something they'd never imagined: humans and Zalathi working side by side. Younglings of both species playing together. A community that shouldn't exist but did. The human refugees were a family, parents with 2 children, who'd fled when their colony was ordered to support a military offensive they couldn't conscience. The Zalathi vessel carried scientists who'd asked too many questions about discrepancies in military reports. Both groups had been branded traitors by their own governments. Marcus watched as Zarek approached one of the human children, offering a toy he'd been playing with. The human child, a girl about the same age, hesitated, then smiled and accepted it. Within minutes, they were playing together. Language barriers irrelevant to childhood friendship. "This is how it changes," Serenya said softly beside him. "Not with grand gestures or political declarations, but with children learning that difference isn't dangerous." "The family we choose," Marcus murmured, watching the two groups of refugees slowly beginning to interact, bonded by shared experience of loss and hope. Over the following days, the station came fully alive. Systems activated as they were needed, revealing capabilities that seemed to anticipate their requirements. The medical base successfully treated injuries from both species. The hydroponics garden produced food that nourished everyone. Most remarkably, the station's computers began displaying educational programs, teaching human children Zalathi concepts and Zalathi younglings human creativity. Marcus found himself in the observation lounge one evening, looking out at the stars. The rust bucket sat in her docking berth, looking small and worn next to the sleek Zalathi vessels. But she'd brought him here, to this moment, this possibility. Serenya joined him, as had become their habit. Kaylor's been analyzing the station's temporal signature. He believes the message from the future isn't fixed. It's quantum probability made manifest. By being here, by choosing to work together, we're collapsing that probability into reality. "Creating our own future," Marcus said. "One where the truth matters more than the lies." "The hegemony won't stop," Serenya warned. "Neither will the compromised elements in our governments. They'll come for us eventually." "Let them come. By then, we won't be alone. Every refugee we take in, every person who sees humans and Zalathi working together, is another crack in their narrative." She leaned against him, a gesture that had become natural despite their physical differences. "I've been thinking about what the hologram said, about their names. Henriksvelen, a joined family name." Marcus's heart skipped. "Serenya, I know our species are different. I know there are biological challenges. But the station's medical bay has been showing me things. Genetic adaptation technologies, ways to bridge the biological gap." She turned to face him fully. "Marcus, I don't know what we're building here, but I know I want to build it with you." Marcus cupped her face gently, still amazed at how right it felt despite the alienness. "The family we choose," he said. "You're the family I choose. You, the crew. Even Kaylor with his constant complaining about my chaos engineering." They kissed, a awkward meeting of different physiologies that somehow worked, that somehow felt like coming home. A chime interrupted them. Relis on the comm, excitement in his voice. "Captains, you need to see this. We're receiving a broadwave transmission. It's from the Zalathi Science Council and Earth's Colonial Authority. It's marked as classified, but broadcasting on open channels." They rushed to the command center where the transmission was playing. It showed officials from both governments, their faces grave. "Citizens of Earth and Zalathi Prime," the human representative began. "We are broadcasting this message in violation of security protocols because the truth must be told." The Zalathi representative continued. "Evidence has come to light of systematic manipulation by hegemony agents embedded in both our governments. The conflicts between our species have been orchestrated to prevent our cooperation." "This is happening," Kaylor breathed. "The truth is getting out." The transmission continued, detailing evidence of hegemony infiltration, much of which matched what they'd learned from the future holograms. Then came the shocking part. "We are therefore announcing a joint investigation and the immediate cessation of hostilities. Furthermore, we are offering amnesty to any humans or Zalathi who have fled the conflict. You are not traitors. You are victims of a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels. The human representative spoke again. We have received reports of a station in the dead zone where humans and Zalathi are working together. If this is true, we ask you to serve as a bridge between our peoples. Your experience, your proof that cooperation is possible, is invaluable. The transmission ended, leaving them in stunned silence. They know about us, Rella said. The question is, Marcus said, what do we do about it? We continue, Serenia said firmly. We don't trust blindly, but we continue. We make this station what the holograms showed us, a place where the future is built one relationship at a time. Over the following weeks, more ships arrived. Some were refugees. Others were explorers, drawn by rumors of the impossible station. Each arrival brought challenges as different people with different prejudices learned to coexist. But they also brought hope, skills, and slowly, a community formed. Marcus stood in the command center one day, watching the organized chaos of the station. Humans and Zalathi worked on ship repairs together. Children attended mixed classes where they learned from both cultures. In the medical bay, doctors from both species collaborated on treatments that neither could have developed alone. Zarek ran up to him, chattering excitedly in the pidgin language the children had developed, a mix of English and Zalathi that somehow made perfect sense to young minds. Uncle Marcus, look what we made. The boy held up a device that looked like a combination of human electronics and Zalathi crystal technology. It makes music from light patterns. Marcus examined the device, recognizing both Kalor's theoretical work and his own practical engineering in its construction. This is amazing, Zarek. You built this. All of us together, Zarek said proudly, gesturing to the mixed group of children behind him. Mila did the math. Tommy figured out the power source, and I put it together, just like you taught us. Productive chaos. As the children ran off to show their creation to others, Serenia approached, carrying a data pad. Another message from the Joint Council, she said. They're asking for a formal report on our community. They want to know how we make it work. Marcus laughed, the sound carrying none of the bitterness that had once defined him. Tell them the truth. We make it work by choosing to, every day, by seeing each other as people first, species second, by building something together that neither could build alone, and by having the galaxy's most stubborn human refuse to give up on us. Serenia added, with that tinkling laugh he'd come to love. Don't forget the galaxy's most patient Zalathi navigator, willing to trust a broken human soldier, Marcus countered. They stood together, looking out at the thriving station. In the docking bays, ships of both species underwent repairs. In the corridors, mixed crews planned expeditions. In the gardens, plants from two worlds grew in harmony. We actually did it, Marcus said softly. We built something impossible. No, Serenia corrected, squeezing his hand. We built something unprecedented, and this is just the beginning. A new alarm chimed, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was an announcement. Kalor's voice filled the station. Attention Haven Station. We've just received word. The hegemony is withdrawing from the border regions. The combined human-Zalathi fleet, using tactical principles developed here, has pushed them back. The war that never should have been is ending. Cheers erupted throughout the station, but Marcus felt a different emotion. Not triumph, but relief. And something else. Something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. You saved us, Serenia said quietly. That day you answered our distress call. You saved us all. Marcus shook his head. No, we saved each other. That's what family does. As celebrations continued around them, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a bitter, isolated man seeking death or revenge, to someone surrounded by family he'd chosen and who'd chosen him in return. The hegemony had tried to use his pain to keep the species apart. Instead, that pain had become the bridge that brought them together. "Captain Hale," a young voice called, one of the human refugee children, holding hands with a young Zalathi. "Will you tell us the story again about how you found the Starwind?" Marcus smiled, settling into a chair as children of both species gathered around him. "Well, it started with a distress signal in the darkest part of space, and a choice between old hatred and new hope." As he began the story, Serenia settled beside him, and he realized this was his true revenge against those who had hurt him. Not violence, not retribution, but this building a future where the divisions they'd tried to create no longer mattered, where human and Zalathi children grew up together, seeing no strangeness in their differences, only strength in their unity. The family they chose had become larger than he'd ever imagined, and in choosing them, Marcus had finally found what he'd been searching for in the dark between the stars' home. Station Haven continued to grow, a beacon in the dead zone that drew those seeking truth, seeking peace, seeking a different way. And at its heart were two captains, human and Zalathi, who'd proven that sometimes the most powerful revenge is choosing love over hate, connection over isolation, and hope over despair. The future the holograms had shown wasn't just possible. It was happening. One choice, one connection, one family at a time.